According to this computer. All right, today is the NLP today. And we'll have one the next 2 weeks, and then we'll probably take it. We'll have to take a couple weeks off because unless I assign it to somebody to run, which I might do, because I'm going to be busy. But today we're talking about secondary gain. Secondary gain. How do we handle secondary gain, right? And in fact, that's one reason I actually thought about this. That's one reason I picked that song, "Numb Little Bug." It's, she's taking all those pills trying to be happy, right? And so but is there secondary gain in staying depressed? Is there secondary gain in anything, And we'll just open it up for a discussion and people can talk about it. But I'll start since it's my shtick. I can tie it into like the class I'll be teaching next week. If people, some of you are in it, the control the food. Sometimes when we do weight loss with clients and help them with their fitness and all that, we don't address what is the secondary gain going on, right? For them to maintain their weight, right? What's the secondary gain? And I found over doing this since the mid 80s, that's, I had a Suncoast, what was it? Clinical Hypnosis Center in Indiana and Chicago, and then South Suncoast down here in Florida. Literally saw 10, 15,000 clients in the offices over the years. And so the secondary gain I noticed was all over the board. People had all kinds of different things. From, not wanting to piss off their family, right? Because, maybe growing up, they heard those things like, well, all women in our family get fat after 40, or it's the old one I'm always busting people on. Well, we're Italian, we have to eat pasta, right? Well, if you didn't know you were Italian, you wouldn't have to eat pasta. It's the second, but the gain is you don't want to maybe alienate your family. A common one is, that I used to deal with is, it was like a testing that people would do, especially women, by the way. But it's like, will they really love me for who I am if I gain some weight, right? Well, that's an interesting secondary gain. You're testing them, and then, well, see, they let me. You're back. Basically, the secondary gain is you're proving your belief that men can't be trusted, right? Because, oh, they gained weight and they left me. Well, you know what? They fell in love with you when you were thin and attractive. Maybe they want you to stay that way. I don't know. And let's not get into judgment. And then they'll judge the person, not this, right? So there's all these secondary gains, right? Big one I used to get in my office, and I'm picking on women because 65, 70% of my clients were women, was not wanting to be attractive. Because they could go in various directions. Maybe they were abused at one point in time. One that women didn't like to face and people didn't like to face is they were in a relationship, but they weren't real happy, and they were afraid if they got attractive and a good-looking person approached them, it might be hard to say no because they weren't happy, right? Does that make sense to everybody, right? So there's all and there's like, it's a metric that just keeps getting bigger. So is there a secondary gain? Two more things I'll talk about, and then we'll just open it up. And how you deal with it, this is one, you kind of have to deal with these ones on the fly, because you can't have a preset thing because it depends what the secondary gain is. In the addiction world, it's common that people have secondary gain for staying drunk. And then you even have to, in that one, and also families, you have to look at one level above, because we always say in our NLP thing, if you make this change, how will this affect other people in your life, including getting thin? But in the addiction world is, if you've been a drunken bum, for 20 years in a marriage, but you're making good money, and suddenly you sober up and you want to take back the checkbook, and they're starting to ask where all this money's going. Well, you didn't care for 20 years. I liked you better when you were drunk, right? So it's like, because you were controllable, right? And some of the, it's almost like a tertiary gain, I guess you'd say, because it comes down that way, right? Also, the secondary gain for like a lot of the addictions is it's like the song Numb Little Bug. It's numbing the pain that you're in so you don't have to face it, right? And then, you know, if you're drunk or you're eating Haagen-Dazs or taking drugs, it goes on and on. So there's all these secondary gains that need to be addressed. And some of those, in my opinion, there's no set script for them, but you just have to be aware. And I always used to say, because the guy that kind of really trained me in the weight loss side of hypnosis, Russell Yarnell, would say, like, you know, 40, 50% of the people that are going to come in, you do a few little hypno magic things, even if it's just a direct suggestion script, it's going to do this, it'll flip their brain, they'll drop the weight, they're fine. Right? But what about the ones that it works for a little while and then it comes back? It works for a little while, then it comes back. We see those secondary gains. You know, I told the story a while ago about the guy that keeps saying he wants to quit smoking, but he's having trouble giving it up because his secondary gain is he likes to sit outside before he's in recovery, sit outside before the meeting with the guys that are smoking. Right? You know, and the old saying, if you if you hang around a barber shop, eventually you're going to get a haircut, except for Billy. Right? Right? So he ends up smoking. So there's those things going on. And the only thing, probably by accident, by the way, that they addressed the secondary gain was the Veterans Administration, right? In a weird way, because if you get diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And it was, from what I understand, it was the VA that pushed this. It's a diagnosis of non-recovery. The reason, right, is if you jump through all the hoops, Billy would understand it, and maybe a couple other people, if you ever dealt with military veteran bureaucracy, you jump through the hoops and you get your post-traumatic stress disorder, disability rating, right? And it goes, and it can come back, true trauma can come back years later. They didn't want, oh my God, you're better now, we'll take away your disability. And then 2 years later, you have a meltdown. Now you're starting from scratch, right? And so in a weird way, I think that one's like, because people argue, well, is there such a thing as a diagnosis of non-recovery, right? But again, maybe people, there are classes you could take to coach you up, by the way, to go into when you're getting ready for your PTSD exam with the PA, how to answer the questions, so you can, but that's a topic for another day. I think some of that's amusing I've been in that system since the early 90s. But anyway, so secondary gain, I think we've all dealt with it in different ways. You see it in different ways, we're seeing it here and there, and of course, I'll shut up with this, sound like Bill Clinton. And one more thing, let me tell you, wait, one more thing. That was his shtick on his speeches, by the way. But you also look at like society secondary gain, right? What's this, things are going on. Is there a secondary gain behind it? And I'll just, not to be controversial, but I see a lot of it in how they create false comparisons to get in groups to fight when it's not really the argument. Like now it's like, oh my God, they're forgiving, if you forgive this, student loan debt, that's going to take money away from X, Y, or Z. Really? Right? Really? Right? We cut corporate tax rates and ran two $6 trillion unwinnable wars. Right? So, but it's like to get people fighting, because the secondary gain is, in my opinion, then they can do whatever they want up here, because these blacks versus whites, Republicans, Democrats, left, right, they're all fighting down here and nobody's looking up here, right? And that's what happens interpersonally with yourself when you're in, because you can't see the secondary gain usually when you're in it, or it's painful. It can be painful to look at, and there was a Noom commercial the other day that I actually liked, and it was about showing people overeating. And the guy, and I've seen it both ways, a guy and a girl, and they're like, damn, I was programmed to overeat. Or I was programmed to clean my plate. And of course, those of us in the hypnosis world have been doing this forever. It's like, yeah, that's part of what we do. It's like, clean your plate, you'll feel better. Eat this, you'll feel better. Or no, clean your plate because people are starving in some God's forsaken place, right? Now we can actually say most of America, lots of parts of America. But so anyway, what is the secondary gain, and that you've run into, and what's the difficult one? And my difficult secondary gain is the ones when people don't want to face up to what the issue is giving them some kind of positive that they don't want to admit. So I will open it up now for talking. I'm done. This is not my day to teach.
So, Dr. Will, I have a question. If you're working with someone and they don't want to or can't see don't want to face or can't see a secondary gain that you're picking up on, you don't want to kind of force them to see it, because then they're going to resist. So do you just find a way to work around it kind of quietly? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Use your skills, young Jedi.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. My NLP skills. Yes.
Tell a story. Or
Yes.
this makes me think of someone. This
Right.
makes me think of a story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And subconsciously they'll relate.
And tell them. It's their story. Just feed it back to them, but they don't have to know you're talking about them. Like, oh, I just had a client in here that blah, 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 blah. But you're having your notes and you're reading back to them, and this is what it was for them. I'm curious. What do you think of that?
Or just leave it hanging. Don't even
Good.
say, just,
Yeah. All right. They'll get there.
Yep.
And you'll get them because you're that good.
Thank you.
Janet.
I have I think I think the first secondary gain when I was years back was I had like my first smoking client, and we were working on that, and he came to realize that his cigarette, it wasn't the nicotine, it wasn't the addiction, it was that his cigarettes were his only friends. He considered his cigarette his only friends. And that was kind of, sad and shocking, So that would be secondary gain, right? That was like a clear cut.
Oh, yeah.
I did a stop smoking thing at a mental health center I worked at. And I was the director for the Governor's Commission for Drug-Free Indiana that worked through a mental health center, but they knew I did hypnosis. So the guy brought me in to do a stop smoking thing for the administrative staff. I said, sure, we could do that. We're all talking. And this CEO was a business guy. He was not in the mental health field. You could tell. He goes in front of everybody. Right? He goes, great, because I'll be glad we get these people to quit smoking, because then they'll be knocking off these damn brakes and we can get more work out of them.
Oh.
And I turned to him and said, if I work for you one-on-one, I'd start smoking.
Yep.
It's like, and I said, let's just cut this off now, because with that attitude, nobody in this room would want to quit smoking. Why would they?
Wow.
So they could do an extra, process of a paperwork.
Yeah.
So secondary gain. Cool.
Ken Guzzo has a strategy where he has 4 quadrants, and this is not a new idea, but I heard him, and you ask the client, what's going to be the best thing about solving this issue? What's going to be the worst thing about solving this issue? What's the best thing about not solving the issue, which is getting at the secondary gain, but it's sort of a roundabout way of looking at it. And I forget what the 4th quadrant, it's sort of like, what's the best and worst of solving it or not solving the issue? And that's a different way to ask the question of what's the secondary gain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Danae, do you have something?
No, I just find this fascinating. Like, I know I ask myself really hard questions, and I think those questions I ask myself help me find my secondary gains. And I don't always think other people are comfortable with that line of questioning. And I like those questions there, David, that you just put out about the different quadrants. And I love the idea of telling a story, feeding it back to them. I think those are brilliant, because sometimes I can see it. Sometimes it's like it's right there. And I've never quite known how to, without blatantly coming out and saying it, well, do you think that if you lose weight, this might happen? Because some people find that rude. So,
Hey, Dr. H, I got a question for you.
Yes, answers
here's
are
the
only
question.
$5.
Only
Answers are
$5? All right, man. I got you, baby. I got you. So here's the question about what I do with my clients, right? I have them give me leverage, and they got to convince me of that they want to get better. Because we worked in the mental health field for 10,000 years, right? And working also with people, if they don't have leverage, if they don't hit rock bottom, see, I can hit rock bottom mentally. I don't want to do this shit physically, right? But when they hit rock bottom, and what I have them do is, like this one lady, she told me yesterday, I have these fears and I'm scared to be around people and all this bullshit stuff like that. So I told her, if you want to work with me, you need to write down 50 reasons why of which, like, when you want to quit, and then get better, and then you need to convince me. If not, you're not gonna fuck up my record, because I'm one and done. And she looked at me and she said, "Excuse me?" I says, "No, I'm one and fucking done." So this is what you guys do. You give me 50 reasons why. Now, if you cannot convince me, we can shake hands and be friends. She says, "I've never had a therapist that said that." I said, "I'm not a fucking therapist." I said, that one said, "That's your problem." I said, "Listen to me. You want to get better?" She said, "Yes." She said, "But I've been having this for 9 years." I said, "Well, guess what? This shit can be done. Give me 50 reasons why, and you have to convince me. If not, I'm leaving." And she said, "Well, if I do that, how long is it take?" I said, shit. I said it the last time about 40 minutes. She said, "Oh, you're that good?" I says, "No, I'm fucking outstanding." But she says, "Well, I got too much stuff to do. Maybe I'll call you back next week, or maybe that's." Listen to me. I said, "Let me tell you why you have this fucking problem. It's because you want to have significance. This shit is so much significance to you that you can tell the whole fucking world about this shit, and they listen to you. You talk your damn ear off for a fucking hour, which I don't have." And she said, "Oh, you're so mean." I says, "No, I'm honest with you. That's the biggest difference." I says, "Here it goes. If you want to get help, here's that price." And then I says, "Well, how much are you going to charge?" I said, "Only $1,500. I don't have the money." I said, "Borrow the money." I said, "Listen to me. If you don't have skin in the game, you will never get better." So anyway, she ain't gonna call me back. But damn, she talked my ear off, Doc, for an hour yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, and Russell Yarnell used to, I watch him do this with people. I understand. Now I'll play with, like, Danae. I understand this, but do this for me. Take your hand, go like this. Now put it on your forehead and go, "Oh, woe is me. I'm special."
Yeah.
And then, like John just said, that people go, "You're rude, you're mean." He goes, "Yeah, and I'm not fat. You are. You know, if you want to lose weight, I'll tell you how to do it."
Oh my
And
God.
he was like right to the, and he was the one that taught me too, when he worked with weight loss, he never talked about being overweight. He talked about being fat.
Yeah.
Right. And then I teach that, I taught that at hypnosis kind of people go, "Well, then there's people will take," no, that's their internal dialogue. I don't think people, when I was overweight, I didn't look in the mirror and go, "I have a slight weight issue. I need to control my eating parameters." No, I'm like, "You're a fat, disgusting pig. You can't zip up your pants." Right. And you're matching the internal dialogue. Right. And also too is, and I will give Russell credit. He goes, also too, part of what he wanted to do was chase away the people that were never going to change anyway, and then would
Mhm.
blame you,
Mhm.
you know, and it's like,
Oh.
no, you know, because, you know,
Yeah.
I think he's the one I stored. You know what? It takes the heart of a warrior to make some of these changes. And maybe you don't got it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, what do they, Billy, what do they say? I heard this at RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program. SEALs say the same thing, right? Most of you ain't got it. Most of you ain't got it. You know? And I used to love, look down to the left, look down to the right. Now 70% of you son of a bitches won't be here. You
Pretty
know?
much accurate.
So anyway, yeah. So secondary gain, cool. Come on, somebody else throw something in there.
So
I-
I had I worked on a person once who was on disability because of her problems. And once she realized that whatever I was doing was helping her and she was getting better, she quit cold turkey. She says, no, I want to stay on disability.
Oh,
But at least she recognized it, right? Like,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I had the
Yeah.
same experience. Exactly, Carl. I had the
Yeah.
exact same experience.
Yeah,
I
well,
was
and
shocked.
I think it was Scott
Like-
McFall. He tells the story. He had a client do that, and he goes, "Well, I'm not going to tell anybody that you're better. You don't tell anybody that you're better, right?" Because it had to do with the guy had back pain, and it was from all this. He goes, "Yeah, but you know, my wife doesn't make me clean the gutters. The kids take out the garbage, and that." And he goes, "I'll teach you pain control. Just don't tell them."
Yeah, but here, when you're on disability, you have to go every year for a checkup to see if you're able to do some kind of work or another. So
Then it could be like, I've noticed everybody getting out of their car at the Veterans Administration, as they get closer to the building, they limp more.
yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they should just go across the border and then they'll get all the benefits they need. They don't have to.
They'll wait a year, but yeah, they'll get them.
Yeah.
I have a client who is involved with a toxic individual, a terrible human being, a narcissist, that I would say a jerk. And they cannot break themselves away because, and she's beautiful, she's successful, she has money. He's the opposite. And she's like, he has this hold on me. And her secondary gain, in my opinion, you know, her secondary gain is she's 47. I don't know how to meet people off of dating sites. The dating sites are all losers, yet she's dating a loser. I don't want to be alone. At least I have someone. Oh, and he cheats on her. And at least I won't be alone. And she's a smart, these people that come to me are smart. They are intelligent people. And that's how she started off her conversation. I'm smart. I'm like, I know you are. I know this. And so her secondary gain is, well, at least there's someone. And I love him.
Oh, bleh.
Yeah, it's like, no, you don't love him because you don't know him. And I don't care that it's been 3 years. You do not know who he is because he's never shown you who he is. Well, I saw good. No, you didn't. You saw him act.
Michelle, have you ever asked her what it is she loves about him? I'm sure you have.
Oh, yeah. That small goodness of a lie that he showed her, you know.
Is that like a pattern of development maybe that she grew up with and saw and measured as love, thinking it was love because she had no other,
Yes.
you know,
Well, and
you
looking
know,
at,
rule to see, you know, guidelines to give her an education on what love is like.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Because she came from a terrible background of all overachievers, alcoholics and abusers.
So when you work with a client like this, you are that direct with them, like you say no, that pretty much so like that. That's interesting.
Yes, yes, because I'm not going to ring around the rosy. All their friends have because they want to stay friends. And she gave this person $2,500 yesterday because he touched her face.
No, stop.
Dude,
How's
wait, let
that?
me send you
For
my
a
phone
house.
number.
For a for a house that he's going to put a deposit, a rental. And I said, oh, so you're renting the house? And she's like, oh my God, I'm renting a house that he's going to cheat on you in because they don't live together. I said, oh, okay. So, and she goes, I want my money back. I said, send him a text right now saying, hey, you said you'd pay me back Friday. I loaned this $2,500 to you. But anyway, and she did, because I said, there's no record. There's no record. You get that money back, and text him now. But give me the $2,500. I'm happy to take it if you're giving away money. But yes, I do say that, and I told her she doesn't have to pay for anyone's love. But the secondary gain, like Janice said, is she has not been taught how to receive appropriate love. She's never been married because she's been afraid of what she saw growing up. And
Hey, Dr. H, I got a question for you, right? Here's a question. Remember Tony Robbins' Human Six Needs, right?
Oh,
and can you, the secondary gains be the human needs like security or significance or variety, or it could be as connection and love, all those human six needs. So then when people are not in their secondary gain, it could be, for example, what as Michelle was talking about, everybody wants love, but they'll settle for its connection because at least it's something, right?
Right.
Or else people want to be significant. John, I have such a freaking problem that you can't even solve it, and you're a genius. Well, yeah, that's my story. Anyway, and it's so much, or else, and they just want to be significant, right? So isn't it, so I'm just thinking, Doc, isn't the secondary gain the very first 4 human needs of that's in your master training pamphlet?
Yeah, I think so, because, and you know who's good at this is a lot of people that run organizations, will feed that. So you're, because I remember I've been slammed because people know it's like, I'll go to a conference if I can figure out a way to make money or at least break even at the door. Right. And they're like, yeah, but you should come for this or that and to connect with the people and I'm like, I'm kind of having this out with an organization right now for a conference in October. And it's like, my job ain't to make you money, buddy. My job ain't to, well, you're not pushing it to your list. No. Why should I? I mean, it's like, I'm not there, if I'm set up at a thing where I'm not making money there, doing anything paid, it's like, there's no, you're just, then and it's that trying to, some people are very good at it and they're very well trained at it, right? And it buys in, now let me turn off my background, I'll show you. And I speak as one.
Are we not recording now?
We're recording. I don't care.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Hold on, choose video filter.
I was going to say something. I'm glad you told me.
Yes, I just in this interlude, I want to warn you, please don't disclose anything you don't want the grand jury to know.
I don't.
Right.
But this, I don't. I can't. Why? I can't.
That's why Billy's wearing a mask.
I'm trying to turn off my back. Well, anyway, behind me, I say that, and yet that whole wall are awards from organizations, and as one of my friends would say, so you're more interested in the 3 cheers than the $3, right? He goes, I'd rather have $3 than the 3 cheers. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, okay. I can't seem to turn off my.
Oh, your background?
Yeah.
I think it's on the home page.
Yeah, it's,
Well,
for some reason, maybe because I might have made.
It should be
It's-
a selection on when you turn the video
Video,
on and
yeah,
off.
on. It's just like, let's see if I blur my background, that one's working.
There you go.
Choose
So
virtue.
You
Michelle, I
have
have
a
a
soft
question.
background.
When you're working with this lady, she has
There you
know,
go. See the
what she
awards
learned
over
growing
there.
up.
There you go.
Okay, and she successfully found somebody that fit into the, what her expectations were really, like that. She found somebody's like, gonna take advantage of her and all this other stuff. So she was successful in finding the person that fit the mold that she brought. If she were to create a new mold with your guidance of what she would really like to find, how easy would that be?
Well, then you have to also
Love that. Thank you. Yeah.
convince her that she's deserving of a new mold. Because
I,
she'll self-sabotage, right?
But at that point, don't you say that was a mold you were given growing up and you don't have to accept it?
right. I, I know I think I could share this even though we're recording, but in my own early 20s, when I was divorced, blah, 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 naive and all that stuff, I found, before I was a hypnotist, before Seinfeld and before everything, I realized I was being attracted to men, but I don't know how I recognize this, but I was misinterpreting strength for maybe a psychological thing, or somebody who was impossible, who was actually cold. And so it was maybe a couple of things when I realized that I was being attracted to the same type of person. This is to answer your question. What I did for myself is I forced myself to do the opposite.
Mm.
I just made a decision to date opposite. I was attracted to a certain type. I did the opposite type. And that kind of broke the pattern. And it was like a whole new world was out there of men that I never saw before. So I'm just sharing something.
Would
personal.
you say
I love
that's a
that.
pattern interrupt?
Maybe a pattern.
put a
It
name on it?
is.
Yeah, because there was a certain type of guy that fit my ex-husband's, and I realized that it was me. I don't know how I did, by the grace of God, it was me. But when I realized that, and I just did the opposite without thinking, a whole world of men opened up that I had never seen or recognized before. And it changed my life, really. I'm married, almost 40 years now.
A lot, just looking at this group, a lot of us were raised by people, maybe, that they just stuck with it, whether you're happy or not.
Yep.
Because that's
Yeah.
what you did. And now we're shifting,
But maybe
Maybe,
because
I
of the
don't know.
depression, you think they went through the
Well,
depression?
in the 60s, if you were a divorced woman, you were probably a whore. I mean, that's what people, I mean,
Yeah,
why? If you don't believe me, flip on, what's that TV show, Mad Men?
yep.
Well, I believe that because as a divorced woman, I couldn't rent an apartment until
Wow.
nobody would rent me an apartment as a divorced woman until I just rang the bell. I went down the wrong street, rang the bell of somebody's apartment building. And I told her right away, I'm divorced and I need an apartment. And she happened to be Italian and with a divorced daughter. She said, come on in, it was like a gift. I could write a whole book about
In
that.
2000, when we moved to Florida, my wife bought the house. But when we went to close, they go, well, we got to put your husband on it. We can't sell a house to a woman.
Wow.
This was in 2000. They didn't change
Holy
it until
mackerel.
2004. Right. And so I remember Christina going, yeah, but what if I wasn't married? Well, we probably ask, can you get your dad or your brother?
Oh, my God.
It was also Port Charlotte, which is a little county in Florida. I guess some of the bigger counties were better. but
That's unbelievable.
That's shocking in
2000.
2000.
that was
Yeah.
2000.
Deep
Yeah.
South.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
What's
shocking.
wrong with the deep south?
You might be a redneck if.
So maybe you could do like the opposite therapy. Something.
Yeah. Well, those of us here, if not in your life, you have a friend that their relationships, it's like the people are interchangeable, but they're the same person,
Yep.
right? Men and women both. You see it. It's like, you know?
Yeah,
Like
I
my-
exactly.
remember they showed a clip one time right after Rock Hudson died. And that, you know, because he got outed because he, you know, well, he died of HIV, but it showed all his lovers through the years. And people would, this was pre-internet, but they're like, Jesus Christ, it's the same guy. But as soon as you would age out, he would replace you. You know, and they all look like Steve Majors, you know, the blonde haired, blue eyed, athletic guy, but masculine, not a soft guy. But it was just fascinating. And it's like, right?
So what
Or
NLP?
Donald Trump, for God's sakes. You
Yeah.
know, it's always an immigrant and it's like primarily blonde. I think they're all blonde. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
same
What
person.
NLP technique might you use if a client came to you with that imagery? How can you do mapping across to kind of
I think
change?
you could. I think you just, yeah, what is it? You know, it's like the story I'll tell is there's a lady who came to me, excuse my bird yelling. She came to me, because she had this, as she said, a loser magnet. You know, she would walk into a room, if there's 100 men, 99 of them are healthy guys that want a good relationship. One guy just got out of jail for beating his girlfriend. That's the only guy I would want, is how she described it. And so she was describing it, she liked these biker guys and shit like that, right? To the point, which was interesting, because she was very successful. She was an engineer. Very successful. She goes, yeah, the last guy, I bought his motorcycle. Right? And so I'm like, sometimes this is just fun, right? When you get clients, I go, let me ask a question. What do you do when you're getting ready to, you know, find a guy? She goes, well, I get dressed up, put on my little leather mini skirt, and I go to this, and she named a bar that's a biker bar. And I went, first of all, in computers, they call that a selection error. You know, it's, you know, and then, but what we came up with, and this was done on the fly, I take no credit for it, that like, what did she liked the image, because her dad was a biker. She liked the image
Oh,
of the rugged individualist.
Mhm.
Even though she goes, you know, when I really think about it, most of her biker ex-boyfriends and husbands they wouldn't do anything that their little group thought was bad.
Mhm.
Right? They're like Marines. I'm a rugged individualist. If you're in the Marines, no, you're not. You are like you're in the tightest box of all the military, right? But it's the idea. So she took what that stuff she wanted, the rugged individualist, the brave, and the motorcycle was a small part at the bottom instead of being the top part. That was the big. And then she ended up, because I knew her from a social organization. She ended up marrying a guy that ran one of the largest law firms in the area, who happened to have a motorcycle.
oh, good compromise.
But he was, you know, he quit a big law firm in Chicago to start a small law firm in Indiana. Then he built the law. And she was describing it. She goes, that's the kind of guy I wanted. He was brave. He was gutsy. You know, he would do that stuff rather than, you know, and she goes, but I still can't get used to the fact he has a gold wing, not a Harley, you know.
Oh, that's a good
She
compromise.
goes, so I bought my own. I go, we could have just done this 5 years ago and you'd have saved yourself some money, but you know, she paid me a lot of money, so I was happy.
Hmm.
So yeah, cool stuff. Anybody else with secondary gain? No? You know,
So what other techniques could you use to
Well,
to
just
either
about-
mitigate or
I think this is the magic of NLP. Any technique will work rather than look for the perfect technique.
Mhm.
It depends on what they're presenting with at the time. Right?
Yeah, I guess you could use the new behavior too. Have them
Yeah,
experience going into a meeting place, getting confident. You could do so many different techniques. Yeah.
Or matter of fact, you guys can actually, it's create your own. Take one technique, the other technique, tweak it together and create your own techniques, which I do. I look at stuff and say, maybe I can hook up this one with that one and mix it with this one and just run with it.
Yeah.
That's how.
Sometimes
yeah.
that just happens. You know,
Yeah.
I'll start off with the intention of doing one thing, and before I know it, I've pulled little bits and pieces from like 3 different things that I've learned, and it works.
Well,
I'm really grateful for all this, everybody's input. Well, you know, when I asked Dr. Horton to do this class last week, secondary gains to me felt like this great, big, overwhelming thing, and it doesn't feel that way. I love the information from everybody, and I think, you know, the best way is to just kind of look at it head on and go, hey, have you ever thought about this? And if they don't like it, well, then maybe they're not ready to change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
this is
some
a
of
great
you-
class.
in a
Yeah, I
lot of my
like this.
classes,
Mm.
you've seen me when I'm doing the visual squash. I'll say party, now they come together. Every once in a while, there'll be somebody in a demo that'll go, yeah, but the parts don't want to come together.
Mm,
Well, which part doesn't? The part that's fighting the change usually, not to generalize, right? Okay, now we got to reframe. Why is the part hanging on to whatever the behavior is?
mm,
Then you got to run down a different, like John just said, now you're down this direction. You can still come back and finish the visual squash.
Totally.
You know?
mm,
That happened a few years ago at the Guild, which was great. I wish I would have recorded it
mm,
because it took a fucking left turn from hell.
mm.
I actually had to work. Jesus. I'm used, a lot of that, to be honest with you, is the basic, when I'm teaching, a lot of it's on autopilot.
Mm.
So when something goes, and that's a secondary gain, it's like, we'll just, you know.
So when they said it doesn't want to come together and you said, why not? Then
Yeah,
what
about
did
it?
you?
Then I just said, well, let's talk to that part. Let's do
Oh,
this.
oh,
Yeah,
Okay, you
totally.
know, what's it trying to do for you? Is there another way we could get it to do for you? What else happened? It had to do with fear. I remember that. And it was, oh, I know, it was on starting a practice and walking away from a paycheck because they've been in the corporate world for long, or
Mm.
a job for a long time, you know, and so we went down that route. And I remember the solution was the part of them that was trying to get them to do it, the reason you wanted to do it, finally reassured this part that guess what? You could go to work tomorrow and the door could be locked.
Mm.
We've seen, have you not seen that in this day and age?
That's
You
right.
know? Or the company merges and thank you for your service. You know,
Yeah.
and it was a lady, she'd actually been through that. Right. So then going back to what John Oda was saying, Dr. John, we went back to it had to do with the certainty versus uncertainty. She was looking for certainty in something that's really not certain,
Mm.
you know.
And sometimes it's just like you were saying, that simple reframe, you know, have you ever gone, what if you go tomorrow and the door was locked? Like I was talking to my sister-in-law this morning, actually, and her husband is in the hospital and it's like a horrible long story. And she was having this nervous breakdown this morning. And she said, you know, I can't stop thinking of, you know, I don't know how I'm going to live without him. And I finally just said to her, I said, you know, I get that. I said, but you know, what are the only 2 things you can count on? Death and taxes. So whether he was in the hospital right now or not, there's still going to come a day when one of you dies. Did you think about what you were going to do without him a week ago? And she said, well, no. I said, did you think about it a month ago? She said, no. And I said, well, then you don't really have to think about it right now. And she was like, does that ever feel good? And so that there's lots of different ways to come at it like that. Like I said, this at the beginning, the secondary gain seemed like this great big huge thing, and it isn't. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of it, but then on her as well, what I would do, I would change her submodalities, right? So when she's thinking about her husband, it's probably in color, change it to black and white, make it cold, put it far away, start changing the submodalities and start doing more of the basics and stuff. And then what I would do, I would put her in a circle of excellence and then like actually anchor that good feeling. So then like she can actually gain that power. Does that make sense?
It does. And that's a great suggestion. This is only like 3 days old. So she's
Exactly.
she's got to process a little bit of what she has going on. Just that simple reframe this morning where she was like, okay, that's it. I'm good. I'm going to go eat my oatmeal. I'm going to go outside. And the next time I talk to her, I'll start to do those things. That's awesome. Thank you.
That, as well as collapsing her negative anchors and then switching them to the positive ones too. All those little small things, because with my clients, I do, because even with my business clients, I do these little small things and they think I'm a freaking genius. And of course they're right? And I just say, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because that's a rough.
All right, everybody, I'm gonna stop the recording. Where the hell's where's the button? There's the button.